everybody, Ty here. Hope everybody is doing well. So, in case you missed it, we had a ridiculously long stretch of severe weather, spanning about 3 days. We live streamed for all of them, including one live stream that spanned almost 7 hours, and that was overnight actually. The channel grew quite a bit as well, and to those of you that are new here, I also want to say welcome and also thank you for tuning in also. But as a whole for the event itself, from the 3rd all the way up until the 5th, we've had close to 600 severe weather reports trickle in, including 27 tornado reports total. The dominant threat for that event was damaging winds in this one. We do have other storm systems down the line that we need to talk about here. There is, of course, no guarantee as to whether or not we will see a bigger event or nothing at all at this point. So keep in mind that even if you see your area at this point within a particular event, keep in mind that we're looking pretty far into range here, and that, again, models often will change. So nothing is guaranteed. But that being said, we're of course going to go into the short term first here. So starting out with today, there is a marginal risk for severe weather. That is mainly for hail here. The tornado wind threats are less than 2 to 5% in all of these areas here. So not a major concern. There may just be a chance that you get a slightly stronger storm in this corridor between Midland and maybe over towards Dallas at this point. Dallas is on the far edge of this marginal risk here. And then Wichita, all the way up towards Wichita Falls, we will watch you too. But for the most part, I wouldn't be too concerned about anything. If you don't like the thunder and lightning, it's probably going to be something that irritates you a bit at best here. Maybe 1 or 2 storms probably could go severe at that point. 2%ers always, the 2 and 5%ers, though, you still always have to watch those because it only takes one. But in any case, though, as we get towards the following day, this is Saturday, we do have all threats possible, albeit they're at marginal levels once again over towards the Gulf Coast. We do have to be watchful from areas to the west of Tallahassee all the way over towards Lufkin for the potential for a quick spin-up tornado. I wouldn't expect anything of significance as of right now. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a slight risk issued given the parameters, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But I still think that severe threat is going to be relatively mitigated at this point. There's a lot of factors that are kind of working against it, if anything, here. But as we go towards day 3, we see a continuation of this threat going over towards the southern parts of Georgia here into the Florida Panhandle and extreme southeastern Alabama. I do think a similar threat in comparison to Saturday would remain for this area, and I think it would be early afternoon most likely at this point here. So we go further out in the range with the severe weather threat. You can see day 4 and 5 potential is too low. It's not until we get towards day 6 through 8 where predictability too low tags come back into play, which states that there could be some potential for activity down the line here. But obviously at range, we can't have the same kind of confidence that we would have within, of course, the 72 to 48 or even 24-hour time frame. The big talk of the town, though, also is going to be our pattern change here. We're really going to start to warm up here anywhere that's east of the Rockies here. What you're looking at here is a classic pattern or a classic PNA setup here. PNA is basically a teleconnection or a pattern sequence that we will often have over the U.S. here. There's a negative phase and a positive phase, and this is mostly bound for the western half of the U.S. If it's cooler than average, like what you're seeing here, this is what you would call a negative PNA. If it was warmer than average here, it's what you would call positive PNA. Pretty simple, but over the 6 to 10 day average here, you see very high confidence, especially over towards the southwest of below average temperatures here as well. And if you go ahead and even go to the 8 to 14 day range, there's a very similar look and very similar probabilities in comparison here. Another thing to, of course, watch over the next 6 to 14 days, of course, is the precipitation outlooks. You can see on the screen here that we're looking like we're going to be pretty busy over here towards the deep south. As time goes on over towards the southern plains here, we're actually expecting below average precipitation probabilities here. Now keep in mind, just because you see that doesn't mean that every day is going to be bone dry. There's still going to be chances of rain, just perhaps not exactly what you're used to seeing. So now that we've looked at that, we can go ahead and take a look at the models here and make our comparisons to what we've just seen. So for one, let's go ahead and really focus in more so over towards Texas and then eventually over towards the deep south here. You can kind of see it a little bit over here. This would be an overnight threat for rain, of course some showers and thunderstorms. But as a whole here, it looks like for the most part, the threat would be hail over towards central Texas. From what I'm seeing here, the forcing is pretty weak at this juncture. As this passes through, the winds are going to start to increase a little bit more as we get into Saturday evening. Timing might be a factor in regards to keeping the severe threat at bay for the Gulf Coast region here. But it does look like some evening, maybe overnight thunderstorms could be possible, which is another reason why they're staying at marginal risk levels. Now, if the environment out ahead of this were to uptrend a bit in regards to moisture or surface temperatures, which is a little harder to do that overnight, like I said, I do see potential for an upgrade here. We'll be, of course, going over that momentarily. And as we go further along here, you can see that there's much more prominent shortwave. These little contour lines where you see these little dips right here, these are short waves. These are good points of lift for thunderstorms. Thunderstorms absolutely have to have lift, by the way. But as you can see here, towards southern Georgia might be a point of interest as we head into Sunday afternoon. But again, I'm really thinking the main threat is going to be damaging wind, maybe an odd chance of a tornado. If we get some decent lapse rates over here, some hail could be possible too. But we'll watch that move out. Start to see some ridging beginning to occur here, which is going to increase our temperatures. Then as we go further and further along, a couple of troughs come in. This first one, and really this first one is one I'm going to have to watch in particular. And not for the reasons that you think. There's an even bigger trough right behind this. The question that I have with this trough, however, is how much moisture is this going to pull from the Gulf? If this robs a lot of moisture from the Gulf, this trough, which is a little bit more impressive here, may end up being able to produce yet another severe weather event, or may be a lot like this last one, at least for these areas over here towards the deep south. As far as Texas is concerned, I know I got a lot of you guys from the last few streams over there towards this region. I'm still watching the area. I don't really see anything that's super threatening at the moment, but keep in mind, we're past a week out at this point. So this is prone to a little bit of change here. Doesn't seem like there's an abundant warm sector, at least towards the upper levels, based off these upper air maps here. But I am going to be keeping an extra close eye on this because, of course, things can change pretty quickly. From what it looks, though, on this latest run, timing also does seem like it's a bit of a factor, as it always is in severe weather. And the timing, from what I'm seeing, could be off, which would lead to maybe the Mississippi Delta seeing a pretty similar situation to the last event. Damaging winds could be likely. If we have any instability, which really in the last case we didn't have a whole lot to work with, otherwise it could have been a much more significant event. But of course, like I said before, we're well past a week out at this point, so a lot of this is pretty variable. So we continue to go forward here. We see a little cool down occur, then we start to see more troughing. Another trough comes in towards the 19th and the 20th. But it seems like more cold air is going to be involved with this one. So as a result, maybe we'll be looking at more winter weather than we would severe weather in this case. And then as we go further along here, the pattern looks like it tries to calm down here a bit. We still have a pretty active Pacific jet here that we need to keep an eye on as we get towards the very end of the month. So, like I said, a lot of moving parts with this forecast. A lot I would expect to change at this point. So, keep an eye out for future videos to make sure that you get proper updates, because I assure you there's going to be a couple aspects of this that will ultimately change. So, looking at our dew points here. In particular, we're going to be focusing on several days. Of course, like I said, with overnight tonight, a big limiting factor with severe weather threat is those dew points are not going to be super rich. The mid-50s dew points are still sufficient enough, but usually when you look for severe weather, you want a much more prominent signal getting into those 60+ degree dew point ranges, especially if you get into 70 here. It's not the only factor that you would look for, but it definitely plays a big part. Now, over towards this region here, towards the Gulf Coast, Really, I would expect more along the lines of maybe coastal storms coming in, making landfall, and potentially bringing waterspouts on shore for our tornado threat here. I wouldn't expect a whole lot beyond that. I really think a lot is going to have to do with the instability towards this region here. We might be making an update video on this Saturday morning if things do uptrend. But from what I'm seeing here, I'm not really all that impressed. And then, of course, Sunday, it's pretty much a similar look as well. Just not a whole lot of moisture available. If there's enough instability further to the north, we might have maybe closer to South Carolina getting into the action here. The dynamics and really, I guess, the kinematics, I should say, the kinematics and the thermodynamics coming together just doesn't really seem like it's occurring in this case. Now, as we go further along here, this is that first trough that I was talking about a little earlier that comes through on the 13th. And from the looks of it, whereas before it was pulling in just a little bit more moisture, it doesn't really seem like it's doing that now. So it is something I'm going to be, so again, this is something I'm going to be watching very closely. Not much of a shoe in regards to what exactly will happen here. If this warm sector and this moist sector were to be abundant here, and the timing were to match up correctly, there'd be a more notable severe setup. Truthfully, I would look for more of a moist sector to increase confidence in this. Would I be surprised that the Storm Prediction Center, or if the Storm Prediction Center would end up issuing a 15% risk on this? Right now, kinda yes, but we still have more model runs to go before they would probably do that. But this does seem to be trending in an interesting direction, however, towards the 14th and 15th. But like I said, really, timing is the key factor to all of this. Then as we go further and further along here, with it being cooler, at least up until the end of the models here, I don't really expect to see too much in the way of severe weather chances towards mid-month until we get towards the latter half and the back part of the month here. Obviously looking 2 weeks out plus in advance, not a lot of confidence to be had in that. Looking at the temperatures though, and this is going to be a big talking point, is we're going to be starting to feel a little bit more like spring over here towards the lower 48, at least anywhere east of the Rockies. You're off to the west here, it's still going to be pretty chilly. And there's going to be some pretty heavy snow, especially over towards the mountains. But as you can see here, by the time we get towards the 11th, and this is getting into next week here, we're even starting to see some 80s coming into Texas here. Widespread 70s, maybe a few 80s sprinkled in for Florida as well. And those 60s get all the way up into the Ohio Valley, even as far north as New York, even the southern New England region here. We're going to be dealing with some above average temperatures here for sure. Then as we go further along, we of course will start to see our storm systems come in. It's going to knock down these temperatures just a little bit here. Nothing super significant with this, but as we go further along, we do of course begin to see that warm up. New warm sector starts to build, and we'll of course be watching for additional storm systems as we get towards this 2-week period and beyond. Of course, like I said, more or less hearsay at this point. Here's a look at what our precipitation maps could be like based off of this current model that we're looking at. Keep in mind, a new model run's probably going to be coming about an hour or two after this video goes up, so just bear that in mind. So a lot of this is prone to change. As you can see here, plenty of shower and storm activity as we get into Friday night and the Saturday here. Nothing super robust, of course. We still look like we get some chance for some heavier showers and storms as we get into the evening. Not much in the way of snowstorms either for right now, unless you're out towards the mountainous west here. Out here we have mountaintops that could see several feet of snow, especially over towards the Sierra Nevada. So if you're looking to go on a ski trip, these next couple weeks will be a great time to do it. As you go further along here, this is that bigger storm system that we're keeping an eye on. A lot of the activity seems to be up towards the northern tiers of the Midwest here. And then as we go further along here, we do see a little something kind of pop up over here towards the Mississippi River Basin here. And then we'll watch this move out. I'm kind of interested in the long range with the threat of flash flooding right now, but it's still pretty questionable at this point. So we go further beyond here, that cold air starts to move in. We have a couple little quick clipper systems here, but that warm sector is going to keep a lot of this mostly as rain as we go towards the 20th and beyond. From that point, this is where we talked about that warm up coming into play, and as a result, we end up seeing just some scattered showers here and there. Nothing super robust from the troughs coming in as we go into the long range at this current point in time. So basically a brief rundown is west is going to be cold, the east is going to be warm, and as a result here, we're going to see a lot more in the way of snow. Again, I really think this is going to be over towards the mountains where we have the greatest totals right now. We could easily see up to 5, maybe even 6 feet over towards the Sierras here, which are the big winners in this case here. Some areas could see maybe even up to 7 feet depending on the mountain peaks you end up at. But towards the valleys, I would expect it to be pretty much a snow hole here. A lot of you guys won't be getting much anything. Like I said, mainly higher elevations I'd be concerned with. There are some regions, of course, as we get east of the Rockies here, where snowfall would be possible. Of course, towards the northern states. Over the course of 10 days, maybe about 2 to 4 inches is possible. Not really a whole lot considering the region that we're in at this juncture. Of course, as we get closer and closer to the actual spring equinox here, we're going to start to see less and less in the way of snowfall here. But over towards the northeast also could be a point of interest. We could see potentially 1 to 3 inches within that 10-day time frame as well. So rainfall is also going to be another point of interest. Again, I really think over towards the deep south is where I think the chance of flash flooding may exist here. But at this point in time, nothing's really guaranteed at this point, but the pattern does seem a bit conducive for it at this time. So a lot to keep track of at this juncture still. Nothing really guaranteed at this point. Nothing super robust outside of that one storm system that really isn't a shoe-in at this juncture either. But stay tuned for future videos. We'll be probably making an update video no later than Sunday. We might do one tomorrow as well, though. But until then, I appreciate you all tuning in, and I will see you guys next time. Metalhead Weatherman signing off. Have an awesome rest of your Friday.